right, let's jump into things. 10:32 on Tuesday, 10th of March, and wow, what a what a start to the week already. Look, it is pretty much kind of I'd like to sort of say as expected, but it's obviously sort of I mean, what can you say, and when can you call these sort of things? It's like obviously we had oil so go through the absolute roof yesterday. I love how quickly the petrol companies and all this sort of like jack up the price of the bowser and that, and then say, oh yeah, because of the oil shock. It's not like they bought the oil that morning, but or even last week. But you know what I mean. As soon as it goes up, bang, prices fly up at the bowser, and then of course, just for the honourable mention of this, we'll have a look at oil. Bang, Jesus, man. Imagine shorting it up here. Wow, you bit crazy, but super sad. There was like all these sort of comments of this guy over the weekend. I mean, how much do you believe these things, or how much do you even care, really? But opened a $2 million short position, 3x leverage, or something like this. I think around this point here. So he obviously got blown out and then sort of boom comes back down there yesterday. But yeah, quick sort of turn of events and that. I think the main sort of real sort of driver. What time did this come through? 4 o'clock yesterday. They seem to really start to dump it off. But I would say this is probably the around these moves here. I'm not quite sure which one it would have been because I'm not quite sure what time it was. But the big sort of mover of things was well, mover apart from that sort of oil move there was the Trump comments, sort of saying that the war is almost complete or something to that effect, and just amazing the timing it has when stock markets across the world get absolutely demolished, oil goes through the roof, and hey, you know what? It's pretty much over. And of course, it's funny because like you sort of you hear the term smart money, and these are all the sort of people. Do these people genuinely believe that that's not sort of some sort of like dodgy bit of bit of timing that these comments come out? But the market reacts to these things. You can see Aussie actually started moving up a little bit earlier through the day, mainly off the dollar, a bit of dollar weakness and that. As we saw, this is what 1 o'clock. It started to move yesterday, sort of through the session. But again, I'm flying around all the charts here, but you can see the dollar gapped up and then just really sold into the whole sort of day, and then obviously closing on its lows down here at the moment, back onto this sort of previous support, but took out Friday's NFP dribble down lows. But look, I honestly don't believe the comments. I think it's a bit sort of odd and dodgy with the timing. I think that that's just kind of like trying to, air quotes, sort of calm the markets a little bit. But the market reacts to it, and that's the thing. Whether you believe the headlines or not, you need to be aware of what the markets are moving on and why. Like I mean, it was funny. I'm clicking around watching different people, and there was these three guys trading. I think they were trading Nasdaq or something like this, and they're all short on it. And it must have been just before those comments came out. And of course, it goes boop, 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 bang, and sort of takes them out. And like, I don't believe it, don't believe it. And then, a couple of minutes later, they work out that it was the Trump comments. Um, and this is the thing, exactly. Sort of like, whether you believe it or not, it doesn't matter. Like the market is, for one reason or another, is moving off this kind of stuff. As to sort of the further move, like the knee-jerk reaction is off the headline, but the trade is actually in whether you actually, think it's going to be what I call landscape changing, landscape shifting news or data. And that's where I sort of step in around these sort of points and I kind of go, well, I don't actually think it is. I don't think that, I mean, I could be wrong. I mean, look, I've got no sort of intelligence as to sort of like, the actual state of the war, but I just question the timing. And also, just how things sort of bounce back, the fact that the dollar hasn't at this point at least fully broken down. Um, I think it's more just to sort of quiet the markets, and I think we got that knee-jerk reaction, which is this big sort of move back up, the sell-off, further sell-off in the dollar. Metals are back up because of the dollar's down. Aussie's up, as we can see over here. Stock market's rebounded a little bit. Obviously, we see the next day or so to see how much that holds, but I question that part of the move. The fact that a move like this, I mean, it's stupid, yes, but that's just the market. You don't like it, well, tough luck. You know what I mean? You can't fight the market. What you can do is sort of, as you see it sort of move up like this, say, okay, do I believe it enough? That's the big question. Do you believe it enough? If you believe it, well, keep buying the Aussie, keep buying gold, keep selling the dollar, keep buying stocks. If you don't believe it, well, that's when you fade the position. So a bit of a rant, but it kind of explains where we're at the moment. So look, a little bit of yesterday, the weekend sort of analysis. Obviously, I said, look, we have sort of two potential outcomes. Obviously, down. Thought this may have come a little bit low before it got the bounce back up. And then this move now is kind of playing out to this. So we are coming up into the second part of the move here, where we've sort of broken through what I'm not a big fan of this kind of resistance. It was more just to give an idea of the theme. So yes, we have sort of broken through with that now. We are up into these horizontal areas. Question is, do you believe it? Like, if you believe it, well, in theory, this should sort of keep going through 71, and then we're dealing with the levels over here now. I don't necessarily believe it. I have actually sort of opened a couple of shorts on Aussie at the top up here. Of course, I'm not a trader that's looking for holds to down here. If we get back to at least the first move would be to undo this big candle here. I'm assuming this is that 6 a.m. Sort of Trump headline. Hey, you know what? The war's almost over. Knee-jerk reaction, bang. I would say that's it. Again, air quotes of it all, easy money. It's just flown up off the headline. I reckon they sort of will undo that. That'll be an interesting point because that does actually come through around the technical level of what would be kind of this breakout of this sort of like fall. As I said, I'm not a big fan of this falling resistance, but it is kind of there. You can see that the highs were coming in lower. This is still actually technically put in a lower high than these highs over here. But I think what I said on the weekend, if you look at the analysis I did on the weekend, I said, look, I do think Aussie will be coming down lower, though I said, look, I think it's going to be a grind. And this is what we can see. New low, flies all the way back up. New low, well, flies all the way back up here again. I do think that this is probably more of an area that we're going to be sort of trading, sort of mid 69s to mid 71s for the time being. But anyway, we'll see how we go. I think first things first, I do think we have a little bit of downside to come sort of off the bat here. We'll see what happens with the dollar, of course. But undoing that sort of first, like this big candle here, because I think it's jumped like 30 points or something just on that headline. So I think sort of like back down to 42, see what happens with the market there. That could potentially give you a bit of a back test to maybe sort of roll around this area over here. Really just got to see what happens with the dollar. I think the dollar, even though it's sort of Aussie's of course not part of DXY, I think that's just still going to be the major tell. It's in threatening a major breakout. It did have quite a sort of strong rejection from what could kind of be a bit of a double top at the moment, but it did close on its support as I showed a second ago. So should that thing find a little bit of a support off that level, because failure to break down is as good as a hold. So you should expect a little bit of a reversal of that move. Plus, if the market actually goes, hold on, wait, maybe the war isn't about complete. Maybe he was just saying it as a headline. Well, those positions are going to come off pretty quickly, I reckon. So, look, I'm definitely not buying it here. As I said, I opened a little bit of a short and that just to get the ball rolling in that. But we'll see how we go in that. But first things first, back down to 42s. That's about another 30-point drop off from here, and then see what happens with the market there. If we drag, whoops, let's keep these things the same size. We've got a little bit of a zone through here, which obviously sort of held a couple of times, danced around a few bits and pieces here, but this is the area that I reckon will be a bit of a make or break for Aussie here. Again, body fill, that little pullback, so a little bit of a support there. I think if you could get down underneath sort of 725 or so, 70.25, sorry, I reckon we could see a little bit more of this move undo. Of course, it does have this little midway support, which played its part a little bit. You can see it's still respect. I'll keep it in there for now. But yeah, I would say that's probably where I'm kind of going to be looking to see if we see, if we see much of a sort of reaction from the markets down here. Whoops. or back off from up here. But certainly back down to this zone here is the first sort of target for me. All right, moving on. Have a look at gold, because gold, where we had actually, here's where we started yesterday. So this is still very much just sideways thinking about things, and we had that big sell down from yesterday. So there's a small little gap up, actually, in the scheme of things, quite small, but it got absolutely dumped into yesterday. I mean, look at that first couple of hours from open, it dropped 3.5% from the highs of open. 180 bucks, bang, straight down. War, come on, yeah, here we go, let's buy it. No, not gold. Exit situation. And look, you can't really sort of say, oh yeah, see it's coming out, because it is still just really sideways. Um, and I mean, we had a couple of levels that I was looking at over the weekend. Maybe it was this chart here, where we're kind of looking sort of for a potential break. But as I said, you got these two earlier sort of levels, which it opened up right into, as you can see, that 5,200, smash straight back down, test the bottom side. I've actually overshot it a little bit here, but this is the close you need to see, in my opinion, for a downside move. And as you can see, it recovers. Again, question is, does the market really believe that the war's about to be over? Well, if they do, they'll probably be dumping off the US dollar. If they dump off the US dollar, then they'll be buying gold. And that's the thing I think that sort of has really sort of thrown people a bit, because they sort of think, war, gold, yep, that's what we should be buying, and that. It seems almost that, well, it is pretty much the polar opposite, and the fact of the matter is it's running opposite and getting its direction off the US dollar, not the headlines of the war. I did see a good comment yesterday, which I thought sort of summed up gold perfectly in that. And it says, like, when people are worried about tomorrow, they buy gold. When they're worried about today, they sell gold. And I think I thought that was a really good sort of quote. Because think about it, like, oh my God, war's about to happen, war's about to happen, boom. And you know what? They buy up gold. Oh, war is happening. Bang, we're worried about today. Stock market crashing, oil going through the roof, boom, boom, and they're selling gold to cover those sort of positions. So anyway, I just thought that was good. We'll see how we go with gold. Again, I think that the dollar may recover. I think this may sort of actually just kind of roll over here a little bit. It's holding up okay. We're on the 1 hour here. If we have a quick look on this fib just of yesterday's move. So that's the drop down there. That's the bounce. So up 78% of yesterday's drop off. So you can see there's definitely some indecision with it all, but again, it is really just kind of sideways. You could say, look, it kind of came through this, but you know what I mean? Nah, I would disregard that a little bit there. I just don't think the market's really paying attention. And if anything, I'll move it out a little bit wider, give it the benefit of the doubt. But I think particularly, even though this is okay, so if you unpack this thing a little bit, you can kind of say, well, consolidation favours, doesn't guarantee, but favours continuation of the direction it came in. So it came in this way, it's consolidating, favours that kind of move. I mean, that's just how it is. It's not sort of like, oh, guaranteed, yep, it's definitely going to move that way. It's just that there's a higher percentage probability with how charts work out that you do move that way. If we do look at these sort of little highs, it does look, and particularly if this fails to sort of get back up to this, 5,200, if we see a little bit of a dribble down from here, you can almost kind of see, like, I don't like curved lines, but where have we got here? Hence, I don't have them on here because I don't use them. Where are they? There, or whatever. Yeah, what I mean, you get the point. Um, you can see, obviously, lower, lower, lower. So should this thing fail to push up to 5,200 here, you are seeing, even with these sort of bounces to 78%, a little bit of a lowering pushing down over to this side over here, which again goes along with that idea that we are sort of favouring a bit of a rollover to push a bit lower. I do think that the dollar will recover. I don't think that, that's it. I don't think the war's over. I don't think I just sort of question the timing with it all. And I just, yeah, I mean, it's just, to me, it's perplexing that just how much the market does react to these. I get it that why they did react, but I don't know. It's kind of sort of like, the smart money. Do they really sort of believe that that's it? The war's over. Yeah, we are close to being complete. I don't know. We'll see how we go. Anyway, that's not what we're doing here. What we're doing here is trying to work out the charts. So look, push above sort of like 51.60. 51.80 is the body fill, just gives us a little bit of a target. 5200 is breakout to sort of actually see some topside move there. As I've just sort of dribbled on for sort of 10 minutes, I don't think that's necessary. It's not my base case argument that that may be happening. Let's get rid of this stuff. That was just to give us the fun of a diamond thing in that potentially over the weekend. I think sort of probably more will sort of roll down over here. Downside underneath 5117. You do have a bit of a zone through here, which you can see is chopped around here a little bit. But I think take out that sort of wick, and then I think we may sort of see a little bit more downside there. All right, so let's just update this a little bit. So this is a little bit of our upside target. Well, upside target, sorry, upside confirmation. Let's call it that one. Pull zone. Oh, and then I would say down there. So that's for the opening part of the session for a bit of direction. Let's move along. We got silver, and silver's actually breaking up and actually looking a little bit healthier than gold here, because we are actually getting this first breakthrough this time over here. Again, same sort of thing though. Like if you think that the dollar's going to break down lower, I think silver's probably the place to be. Do I think it's necessarily going all the way back up? Probably not. It's a very choppy kind of chart, as you can see, breaking up, smash down. Now it's kind of dribbled back up over here. Of this large sell down, just passing sort of coming up towards the 61%. So I think this is really going to be the crucial point here. And this is, again, sort of the line I was putting on from the weekend. Should we get up into this sort of 89, 90 area, I think that's a good sort of short area. That's negated by a close above sort of 91. But I would say that this is probably an area in which if we do dribble up a bit higher here, we might start to see some stronger sort of selling pressure sort of coming back down over there. So not really anything for me in silver in that at the moment. But as I said, I think this is kind of probably more like what we saw yesterday. Where was the sell down yesterday? I'm paying attention to silver. So silver didn't really get smacked on the open yesterday. Oh yeah, it did. So what am I talking about? Didn't get smacked down. It got smacked after. Same with gold. I was playing catch up here a little bit. Where's the thing here? So silver came down. Well, yeah, it got smacked 6%. So $5 or 5.40 down off the highest. But recovery here, bang. You can see the difference in these charts there, can't you? So, this was the sell down of silver yesterday. Gold is sitting about here at that 78% recovery, while silver has done almost 1.16. So silver is definitely the place to be with the two metals in terms of recovery of that. That's absolutely smashed to the top side there. Again, it's like whether you believe this sort of move is going to continue and happen. If you do, then cool. Well, keep going on. As I said, I wouldn't be shorting this thing quite yet, but should we get up into this 89 area, I think that's a pretty good risk reward there. You got the 61% of this larger move down. And then it would feel very sort of stretched at this point here. So I'll certainly be keeping an eye on things. Should we get up into this area over here, put it at 61%. Put alert here. 61%. Fib. Larger move. Short options. Up in that sort of 89 to 90 area. That'll be interesting to see what happens there. But as I said, for me at the moment, I think I'm happy to let this see. If this thing comes back down over here, I'm happy to sort of let that go at the moment. It's attempting a little bit of a breakout. Obviously, we had those two little zones there. It's out through the first one. You could say maybe a little bit of a back test here. So I think sort of again, if this pulls back into this area and gets a second bounce, like confirms this with a double, like another sort of like a deeper sort of a higher time frame back test, call it that one. If we come back down here and then sort of move back up, then I think definitely you got some intraday short, intraday long options. But I would say at least minimum sort of come back down, test this 86 area, 86.20s. If that holds, then you're probably moving up to sort of towards 90, which is not too bad. It's about a $3.5 move up to the top side there. If it comes back and fails through here, well, I think you're just going to come back down into this chop around this sort of 83s kind of area here. All right, and let's get to the dollar. Here we go. So we've got the dollar. So of course, remember that we had daylight saving this week as well. So everything's an hour earlier. So metals aren't opening at 10; they're opening at 9. DXY is coming online at 10:45 slash 11 o'clock. But the other ones for the time being, so Tokyo, China, they're still 11 and 12 respectively because, of course, they're not America. They're not changing with those times. But again, all this will change pretty soon as well. This will change when we have daylight savings local in Australia. So it's in a bit of a grey period with the timing and that. So just need to sort of be aware of sort of when the volume's going to be popping in and all that. Anyway, here we go. So we got dollar. It has come back down, held this bottom zone, as I said before. It does seem to have had a little bit of a bounce up here. Look, it's just early days. Let it sort of settle itself out. But the fact that it didn't break down back below here, I think for the time being is sort of kind of positive. So a little bit of a bounce up here early. See what happens. If it bounces up and then sort of comes back down, comes through, well, this is the trade. Quite a substantial move, potentially, to sort of come back down over here. We've got top side of this sort of falling resistance. We've got that big breakout area at 98. We've even got a gap fill. So there's quite a few little targets that we could sort of aim for sort of on the downside here, should these things want to sort of continue and rip up a little bit higher. Um, at this stage, not my base case in that, I would say that the fact that it held this zone here, you've got to respect. That's just, if it does break this zone, so if it breaks underneath sort of 98.60, give it a extra couple of points or so. If it breaks underneath 98.60, that's the kind of trade we're looking for. But while it's up above 98.70s, I think you just need to respect the idea that this is potentially just going to be a big box range over here. So it didn't quite get as high. I kind of thought it would have got up to test at least 100 before we got this sell down here, and honestly didn't think, as you could see with this line, I thought the back test might have just come here, but didn't get that high, pushed down, got hammered into. It was getting sold into throughout the day anyway. So it really had that sort of, oh, here we go, bang, walls, oil, all this kind of stuff moving up over here. And this is mainly off the idea because oil was so high. Because oil, again, if you look at the sort of the weekend analysis, it was just oil higher. Well, that's going to push inflation. If they're going to push inflation, it's not the right conditions for the Fed to either be able to or want to cut. And so their sort of choice at the moment is between cut and hold. Hold is the hawkish side of stuff. So that's why you see, boom, a bit of a push up here. But as soon as that oil valve, excuse the pun, opened, and we saw oil sort of coming back down, what happened? The dollar came down here as well. So again, do you believe it? I don't know. I don't. I think that the chart's going to be showing us today, and I wouldn't be surprised if we at least sort of undo these moves over here. I guess this is the Trump comment as it started to come down here into close. So let's see what happens. I wouldn't be surprised a little bit of upside early here. That goes in line with, as I said, the silver coming back and doing that back test. Probably Aussie sort of undoing the same sort of move where Trump made the comments. So that's why I think those first kind of like, you don't need to sort of be going, hey, I'm going to hit the home run and now it's definitely going here or definitely coming down here. Short-term intraday trading, well, you pick for those levels, and I'd say undoing the headline is very much the first thing, and then assess what's going to happen with the market from there. If we get up to this level here and it drives back to the lows, then I think there's a good chance we go through. But should we sort of come up here, and then we will most likely see a little bit of a sell back, but should we sort of see, then some support come in and maybe a little internal inverted head and shoulders, something like this, then I think then you got a topside move. So that's why I'm targeting this area here, 99.18, 99.8, 20, whatever. This kind of level here where Trump made the comments. Expect a little pushback there, but as to whether this comes down and comes all the way back here, that's how that goes through. But should this thing bounce back up off there and then go back through that Trump comment level, then I think it's just game on and we just sort of start moving back up over to these levels over here. And that'll sort of obviously give us a little bit of downside on the metals. It'll give us downside on Aussie. You probably see oil rising again. All these kind of things sort of working together. But the first thing I'm looking for is to undo those Trump comments. All right. Let me just write this note. All right, moving on. And finally, just have a look at yen. So this thing actually sort of recovered quite very well. Yes, I was looking a little bit more like silver just in its recovery here. As you can see, gap down and then bang, move back up from, didn't really have a sharp sell down, actually gap down. But as you can see, big recovery there. That's way up past the 161 of kind of the gap down, Friday's close to Friday's low, Monday's low, sorry. Look, it has sort of come back up out of the top over here. It does seem to be waning here a little bit. It does look, as you can see, sort of like the RSI. This is only on the 1 hour, but the RSI is kind of drifting off as it keeps grinding higher here. I think sort of you could put in like a little short-term platform here. That's probably where you'd want to sort of see what this thing's going to do. And then let's put this above that spike high there. They're the kind of directions I'm looking for direction. Sorry, one sec. They're the kind of levels, sorry, I'm looking for direction through this session. This doesn't quite get up to these highs over here, but as you can see, mad. This is like perfect representation of the market at the moment. Mad choppy. Massive gap down, bought right to the highs. But what happened afterwards? Completely undid it. You know what I mean? So I would be reluctant, and I am reluctant to buy this thing at the top over here at the moment. I think there's better trades out there, but certainly at the moment, this RSI is sort of pulling off as it sort of grinds higher, get below sort of 1136, then I think we could potentially sort of see a little bit more downside. I think the sort of for this will be this will be the interesting to tell this 111 area as to sort of what's going to happen with the market. You're either going to come down here or you're going to get your bounce back up here, but that's kind of where I'd be looking for because. Although it sort of like chops around here a little bit, obviously we got the zone or I got the zone sort of through there, and you can see a number of times pushing against it, pushing against it, pushing against it, and when it finally broke through, this is why it's always important to wait for those candles to close. As it broke through, it took a couple more candles to do it, but you could see it sort of move on with the market there. So I think sort of that'll be the direction. So if we come back down and test this 11110, 11110, whatever, that kind of zone. If the buyers step in there, bang, okay, on with the show. Break back underneath here, then you're probably just, as I said, coming back into this chop, and you'll probably be targeting back down towards this 110, 50 kind of area. All right, that's about it for I don't think we have much on the sort of news front today. We had coming through a bit of Japan data this morning. Business confidence for the Aussie coming out in 20 minutes. And that seems about it. It's not really a great deal going on. Got CPI tomorrow night. So this is the one advantage. So the data's coming out at 11:30. That's the one advantage of this time of the year that the data comes out a little bit earlier. All right, that's it from me.